future-proofing organization against digital transformation risks. We're looking forward to hear from him, and that will be our keynote for today. Until soon.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I know it's early morning. Some of you would have driven like me, a lot of traffic coming to airport. So thank you really for being here on time and spending your quality, I would say, 30 minutes to listen to me. I'm really grateful, and I also thanks to the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I hope this is some kind of valuable talk. Whatever I'm going to say is probably not new to you, but as professionals, we see some of these risks because I come from a risk world every day, and we deal with it. And it's always good to exchange ideas and see what's best practices, right? And the topic that I have is slightly different than the actual focus of the organization, which is data and analytics. But it's quite related because I have been working as a part of data analytics risk group. But in my organization, technology and data analytics work hand in hand. And my focus is on digital, which is very much dependent on data. As you know, digital platforms are one of the major sources of generating data. And how, the whole data life cycle and chain, how do we manage risk around? And at the end, everything is hosted on a technology. So all those are pretty interrelated, if you say, and that's why I feel like probably a lot of the issues that you see day to day, you might relate to some of the workflow or items or steps that we'll just discuss today, and you might connect with you. So thank you again, and I'll just jump to the slides. So this is briefly the agenda. It could be a lot of content, but I will try to keep it light, not going through each item. But essentially, as I said, coming from digital, I wanted to just kind of speak to you on what is digital. Again, it might mean different to different people depending on where they are coming from. If they're more from security, it's a lot around data security. If you're coming from privacy, again, it's around, data or privacy of digital platforms. I'm coming from tech side, so there's a lot of resiliency, capacity planning, uptime, making sure technology is available 24/7. So again, there's different definitions. So without taking more time, I'll jump to the slides and we'll talk one by one. So this is something I've borrowed from a McKinsey report, and how do they define digital? One of the industry leaders, and the kind of McKinsey is widely respected. So for them, if you see the way they have defined the first two bullets, if you see they are data and analytics. So believe it or not, digital today cannot work without data, cannot work without advanced analytics. The reason digital platforms or digital services are so popular is because they can in real time process a lot of data, process a lot of advanced analytics in the background. There are a lot of AI services that are embedded to those platforms that we day-to-day use. In fact, some of this, in the conference, we were just talking about, scanning of IDs and badges, and, in LinkedIn and wherever you go now, more and more those techniques are getting embedded, right? Barcode is so popular now. So those are some of the kind of benefits of using these digital applications that were not that savvy in the pre-digital world, right? So again, all of this works with data and analytics. If you bring them down, digital platforms are as dumb as any other system could be, right? Again, it talks about smart visualization and interfaces. You see day to day, today's chart and the way data refreshes, be it election results, be it your sports scores, that is again all possible because of the advanced smart visualization tools, and they all sit behind the digital platforms so that they give a very intuitive interface to the users, right? Again, talent and culture. Without talent and culture, like all of us, like the like minds, I think none of the organizations can do that if they don't have the skill sets or they don't work with partners that can provide them with the skill set. That's the need of the hour, right? That's why like today everybody is talking about data science and AI. Students, are going for that because that is the need of the time. Then the very important part is process and workflow automation. So again, without the automation, the whole purpose of digital platforms is that you had certain processes that were done probably in a manual fashion, how you can deliver them digitally. Again, I coming from a banking world, that's like the core of the intent of why we are putting services on digital, right? Because people or today's customers, they want 24/7, to the extent possible. You don't want to drive down to a physical location to get a service when you can get that touch of a hand on your mobile phone, right? So it is the need of the hour, and that's why we need to automate a lot of those processes that were being offered manually into the digital platform, right? And for us to offer that, we need a flexible and scalable infrastructure. Nothing is possible without the hybrid kind of infrastructure that all of the organizations are using. You have your data centers, you have your multi-cloud platforms, you have third-party services, you have API. All of this is a mesh that kind of helps you to deliver on time and on demand services that again are the need of the hour in order to be competitive in the market. And as I already covered the last point, external ecosystem, that's like very, very important. Again, no organization in today's world we know are self-sufficient. We are heavily reliant on our partners, right? Be it third-party suppliers, be it, like again, credit rating agencies, or like depending on which industry you are, those core suppliers are very, very essential for your business continuity. So it's also important that all of this works seamlessly, then only a digital platform can come and offer what is need to offer. Again, this is like a definition. Again, I took it from Wikipedia, but as we said, it is actually enabling services that are delivered over the internet. It involves high level of process automation. So we spoke about that. The whole purpose of having an online internet-facing platform is to enable you services that can be automated and offered in real time. It includes a lot of APIs and cross-institutional services. Again, as I said, when I come from a banking world, in my side of the world, it's all about a desktop application, a mobile application, and ATM services. It could also be a call center service, which can be, those are the point of sales or point of contact for customers. And that is where we need to take the service to. If there is a service that can only be offered manually, why can't we make an effort to offer that digitally? So that is, I think, the intent of a lot of the organizations today, to basically capable of that, right? And when we talk about a digital platform, again, there are multiple layers, and without going into a lot technicality into that, just talking about the layers, the first is the channel layer. Again, all of you, your mobile, your desktops, I spoke about ATM, and these are the channels through which like a bank offers services. Similarly, depending on what industry you are, you have different channels. Like for example, airport, again, they have a mobile application, they have a desktop application, they have kiosks, which are more like contact point or call centers. So most of the industries have like every company nowadays has a mobile app, right? So that is like the front-facing channel that is talking to customers. Again, behind that, there's an application which is hosted. It could be on OS platform, on Android. It could be, again, on a Windows desktop kind of application. So those applications, again, if you're using desktop, then or even a mobile, the application layer is the one that actually interacts with customers and offers you that service, right? Behind that is a platform. Again, the platform is a complex set of components, right? It is your operating system. It is your, you could be your mobile operating or desktop. It could be your servers, operating systems. It is a big data platform behind that is talking to a lot of those applications. So instead of those applications going and talking to each and every database, they are actually talking to the big data platform, which is sourcing data from multiple sources and kind of combining and giving you a picture that you want to present to your customers, right? Again, there are other components, identity and access management, again, a very important component because you want to know the person who is being offered the services are they authorized or not? So your identity and access management does a lot of those background checks to authenticate customers, right? And then your document management system, because everything that you are using digitally or you're signing certain documents, they need to be stored in a document library and might be later transferred to a permanent database. But all these components, and there are many more, are actually defining your layer on a platform level. And then we have foundation layer, which is your core systems. Again, coming from a banking world, your core banking, your mainframe apps, your different APIs that either are talking to your internal applications or your external applications, your book of record systems, which actually authenticate the customer's data. Those are, again, some of those foundation layers. And the last one is the infrastructure. Again, as I said, without infrastructure and without scalable infrastructure, the services that we are offering 24/7, we are seeing here Microsoft Azure, one of the sponsors. You have Amazon, you have Google, you have multiple cloud services, as well as every organization is maintaining their own data centers, or they are probably hiring suppliers to offer them those services. Again, without the mesh of that infrastructure and without the 24/7 scalable nature of the infrastructure, these services cannot be offered in short service of time. So this is, again, this was probably I would say, the most important slide in terms of what we talk when I come and say about digital, what do I mean by digital, right? Again, as I said, coming from a risk management background, the way I see more on the technology side of the things, there are two kind of level of risk that I see. When we talk about digital or digital transformation, first is the service delivery or the software delivery aspect, because you are building something. Whenever you're building a new service, there are some risks that are bound to occur, right? The second is your operational resiliency. You have the existing infrastructure, the existing services. You also need to maintain it, and you need to make sure that is highly, highly available, right? So both of them kind of in the risk world, both are important. If you do one thing wrong, that could lead to the risk even in the second area, right? So again, when we talk about software delivery risk, again, none of this is new. All of you coming from a technology, a data background, you understand when you're working, when you are building new databases, when you are writing scripts, you're designing new data workflows, a lot of these risks occur, right? Again, one of the biggest or the starting point where certain things get missed are the functional and non-functional requirements. When when folks who are working on projects, when they gather those requirements, in today's world, most of the organizations are moving to agile, which means a fast delivery. You're writing user stories, but to the extent that you're documenting and understanding the business and what it needs and how it can be delivered and what it would mean at a technology layer. So what is your data structure that you have today? Is it aligned to offer the new services? You might be adding new data, and you might have to think about how your backend systems will kind of talk to them. All those things have to be thought at a design or at a requirement level. And sometimes we see certain minute misses happen when you're taking those requirements, and they come to get noticed very last when you're already releasing those, and then you see those issues. You have to go back and redesign everything, which wastes a lot of man hours and money, right, for the organizations. Again, second is a kind of similar, but alignment to your target architecture. So as I said, you're using APIs, and you are actually using those services, a lot of times you don't know, again, what API, can fail, or, might be there needs to be some changes needed to your third party or to your destination APIs for the service that you want to offer. So again, a lot of this has to be thought at an architecture level and how it aligns to your target. The third risk that I see very, very often is lack of production-like data. All of our organizations, we are strictly governed. We have a lot of controls, and we want to ensure that no production data is available into non-prod environments. So when you have that kind of control environment, how do you test services that can mimic your real world environment, right? Because again, data is the most important. If we don't have the kind of profiles that we have in production, we don't have the kind of transactional data that we might see in the real world, we can test to the extent we want, but we will still have certain scenarios that will fail when it comes to the real production environment. So again, I've seen a lot of vendors nowadays, they are offering AI-enabled, synthetic data services. So actually, that can solve the problem where we have, because we cannot use PII data in our test environments, right? So how do we kind of get production-like data without using any of those confidential information that should not exist in non-production environments? So I think technology is again coming up to solve that problem, which is a good problem to have, but that I would say that use of synthetic data would be very critical for the organizations to ensure that they can get as close to as production data and mimic some of those test cases, right? Again, on the technology side, like our test systems might not be as, because production changes every day. There could be new connections, new APIs. How do you ensure your test environment is in sync so that you get the best of the testing in your test environment? Again, that requires a lot of efforts into maintaining and syncing your test environment with production, right? Then you have lack of end-to-end integration testing. So again, that is very important, because a lot of times you go to certain steps and you stop. You might not test a third-party connection for some reason, right? And then it happens in the real time that the third-party connection starts having some problem, because if they have to do a change at their end to accommodate your change, might be that information was missing or it was not communicated. So that's very important that you have to test your entire workflow end to end to be sure that that service is going to work, right? Again, there's a lot of communication that happens with any change. So your business teams, your people, like for us who are working in branches, they have to be trained on a new software, on a new workflow. You have the IT change management processes that need to happen. All that needs a lot of planning and execution. And if certain things are missed or certain people are left from that, you are going to see day one issues, day one operationalization issues, day one, some of the technical glitches, and then people don't know what to do. So you're going to see a lot of that if that change management piece is not inbuilt into the project lifecycle, right? And the last is production incident management. So whatever you plan, there is always a chance of something not working. And how do you tackle that? What is your backup plan? What is your full fallback plan? And how can you, in short time, fix that so that it doesn't impact your customers? I think that is a very important part of your delivery, right? So coming back to resiliency or day-to-day operational risks, right? Like there are risks, obviously, when you're building something new. But even the current infrastructure, the current service, it is bound to have some risk, because that's the world we live in, right? None of us have a risk-free world, right? So again, some of these could be repeated, but certain risks obviously are on the capacity and redundancy, right? Being digital, being 24/7, you don't know when the traffic, like it could be a new service, a new product, or like close to, let's say, your tax filing time, so you have to plan for all that additional capacity and redundancy that is needed to service your customers, right? A lot of the big organizations have legacy systems, so those legacy systems have to be kind of modernized. They have to be brought into compatibility with the modern UI UX that we are building, and the kind of basically the flexibility that's needed for at the front end that also needs to match with our backend systems, right? I already covered external interfaces and services. Again, sometimes a third-party service could fail, which is outside your control. You still have to ensure that, how soon you can bring them back and how soon, what is your backup plan to offer services, right? Again, coming from data validation errors, whenever you're building a new service, you have to think about whether all the data that you would be consuming, can it flow seamlessly to your backend systems, to your databases. Again, if you need to do any changes at the backend to accommodate those data fields that you might be changing or adding, that is very important. And sometimes, certain, even in an operational world, certain changes, which is not a project, but a small change can throw those errors because that data validation was not done properly, right? And then it talks about latency because, again, being in a hybrid environment, you have certain apps on your data centers, certain services are on cloud, certain are on third party. It can be spread all over, right? For a North American organization, it could mean from a West Coast to East Coast to, certain regions in Canada. So it is very wide network. And when you are operating in such a complex network, then it is bound. There could be latency, there could be slowness. And those also are day-to-day, some of the risks that we see in the real world, right? Again, why do we see all these issues? Why do we see those risks? Where are certain areas that we might be falling short of? Again, a lot of times, this is the real struggle, that most companies go through is, you are a lot of times understaffed. The amount of work that the teams need to deliver in short amount of time, not every organization struggles with, having that because we don't have unlimited resources, we don't have unlimited money. So, staffing is always critical, right? Again, when you don't spend enough time on planning and writing your requirements, you could spend a lot of times in due diligence or later investigating those incidents. But if that much of time was spent in writing those requirements, then might be a lot of the effort could have been saved, right? Again, sometimes we lack subject matter expertise, not in every project, everywhere. You would have the kind of people who understand business on the ground that can tell you that, hey, you're missing this thing, this is not how it works, and how are you going to take care of a certain kind of step in digital world, right? So that expertise is needed in your team to challenge you every time, you're trying to develop something, right? Again, in Agile, we say you develop fast, but sometimes you test less. You don't test to the extent that's needed, and that can also cause issues, right? You have lack of alignment because not all teams are in the same core group that is building stuff. You have backend team, you have, a certain middleware interfaces team, you have third-party, teams. Then how do you bring everybody to the table? How do you ensure everybody have the same visibility of what you're trying to do, right? Talk about lack of third-party testing with third-party interfaces. Again, lack of training. Certain times you could fail on the security side of the things. You don't have, you have not aligned your password complexity, or you have not aligned your OTP, or your basically number of attempts that is needed. So sometimes you might be designing your own why you have to follow the enterprise standard. So knowing what is the requirement and what is the organization standard, a lot of times there are resources on contract or people change, and it's important how do you make sure everybody knows about what the enterprise requires, right? And then lack of your basically feedback learning mechanisms. So whenever these things happen, then you need to go back and make sure you have a formal process, and you can bring in those nuggets so that next time any team is working on the same problem, they know how they can solve for these issues. I know we are on time, so I'll try to finish it and leave some time for any Q&A. But what are the impact of these risks? We all know, so we could release software in the environment which has high severity defects. Again, we might have to go back and fix those. We spend extra time to fix those issues that could have been solved in the development phase. There's burnout for the teams. It kind of leads to low morale. You have your business stakeholders that is not satisfied. We also run a risk of regulatory and compliance because, whenever you are releasing something that is customer facing, or even it could be a back-end process. We need to ensure all the requirements are met, right? And then there could be a reputational damage if these services are customer facing, public facing, then obviously there is a reputational impact, right? Again, how can we fix? We need to start early. We need to make sure we spend enough time on planning. We need to have the right experts. Without the right people, nothing can be delivered. Technology is as good as it is, but you still need the minds, the people, the knowledge that they have to build on the technology, right? Again, document at depth, whether it's agile or waterfall. If we don't have our requirements signed off, if we don't, to the T point, we don't have captured what is needed, then it's a blame game of who did not give what and why it failed, right? Again, both functional and non-functional, test enough, things can be resolved if we really spend more time on testing. We do not squeeze the testing time. We do not rush through because there's so much time spent on development. Now there's no time on testing. There are things that are going to fail because we didn't test it enough. Again, as I said, being from data, you guys validate end-to-end data workflows. It's the most important thing because you need to ensure that what you have designed is actually functional in the real world. From redundancy and capacity, again, we need to plan for that and we need to have a backup plan, right? So, how do some of the companies that are best in class, what do they do? Again, they have their investments early. When we talk about data and AI, we know the buzzword nowadays like ChatGPT or those companies who developed these actually started very early. So they already knew this was a game changer, and 30, 40 years they invested into that, the fruit of which we are seeing today. So, a lot of those best-in-class companies, they actually start and think early. They take risks. They actually experiment with technology. They have the best skill set, because without those skill sets, you cannot be innovative. And, they keep trying till they get right. Nobody in the world gets perfect things in first time, but you have to keep trying. You have to make sure, your product every time you're improving and, you're maturing that. So where do we go from here? Again, we have to, what is very important, that we have to map our process and controls. When we are going to offer anything digitally, we need to know what is the interaction point, what is that touch point, how will the process transition from a manual to a digital world, right? Again, your data architecture, your structures, your requirements, you need to know about it. Without that, things cannot work in the real world, right? You need to do testing, you need to do iterations, and we also need to benchmark our product with the industry. Where do we stand? If that is how you are going to achieve or be in your top three, if you are going to see what others are offering and where do you fall short. And then you need sufficient capacity, both in terms of your infrastructure as well as for your people, right? So again, concluding, basically, sorry, I don't know why it's not coming. Okay. So yeah, again, as I said, coming from a digital world, it's not a destination, it's a journey. Every day you have to improve on what you're offering. You have to balance the market demand with your compliance, because, it's good to have Zazzy applications, but we still need to ensure all the checks have been done. All our key processes, risk and controls need to exist in the same manner as they were being offered in a manual world, right? And then we have to capture those requirements early. We need key stakeholders. A lot of the components that we build, we should think about having reusable, so that we don't have to kind of spend every time building something that can be shared across multiple applications, right? And then course correct as needed, because you will never get it perfect the first time, but you need to keep doing those small improvements to get to that. I think that was all I wanted to cover. I know I went fast and covered a lot of content, but thank you, and I'll be happy to take some questions.
We'll be taking questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand so we can get a microphone to you. It is early morning, but questions.
It's quite heavy, I think. A lot of content I rushed through, but when I was designing the slides, I didn't realize that.
I'll ask a question in between.
Sure.
While people get the creative juices going. What about, you talked about mapping processes, keeping them, how do you map and keep up to date, especially with all the rapid changes that are happening throughout these transformations?
Yeah, so I think it is a continuous exercise, right? Like most organizations, they have a yearly cycle or a quarterly cycle, So you do a processes can controls refresh, because your process keeps changing, new processes get adding. So, like you take like a quarter or two to refresh, and then you actually go and test those controls and see those are working. So there's a lot of effort and manpower spend on that, but that is really important. So to your answer your questions, that is a yearly exercise that we need to go through, and sometimes it might be needed based on if there's a big change. Like let's say if you are inheriting certain processes from another organization, you have to make sure those controls are in sync with your own organization. So either it could be depending on something getting changed, or in your routine world you have to do it at least on a yearly basis to make sure you're on top of that.
Excellent, thank you. I don't have my glasses on, so I may not see the hands, but try.
A lot of organizations have been, especially regulated organizations, have been dealing with these kind of risks for a while. So I'm thinking of like the financial services organization companies when it comes to credit risk management, or insurance companies, or the pharmaceutical companies. I was wondering the degree to which we can look at those organizations for their best practices and model what we're doing around data and analytics and AI risks, and see what they're doing. And presumably they're all unhappy with how long it takes and want to make it more efficient and accelerated. But is that a good starting place?
It is a good starting point, and I'll tell you, like when we get when we get audited by either our own audit teams or the regulators, they benchmark us with the industry, right? So if I come from a bank, they will benchmark us with all the Canadian banks, with all the American banks, and if they see a good practice or a control at one place, they are bound to test that at your place and say, are you lacking? And they're going to write us on that. So it is, obviously, that is how it's possible. If I am a bank, I'll go and see what my peers are doing and how I can learn or get some of those tools or processes. Or if there's nothing existing in an industry, then you look to another industry that has probably more matured in that space and how you can borrow and adapt. But, I think all of us live in in a dependent world, and that benchmarking, a lot of times you hire consultants for the same thing because they have seen this same problem, and they have tried to solve it or help their client solve it at other places. So that is obviously the best practice to survive in this world. And it could be even geography, like Singapore or Asia could probably be doing something good, and you can take it. Europe might have a law that was soon coming in North America, so you have to start early and see how the world is operating, right?
Any more questions?
I guess either it was too heavy or...
Well, Gaurav will be in the audience if you need to ask him any questions. Thank you so much, Gaurav.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.